Hello and welcome back, Charlotte here for the Little Paper Tree, and today I'm making a monochromatic one-layer card using a stamp set from Avery Elle. This is the Be a Unicorn stamp set, and first I'm going to start by placing my card base, which is made of Neenah 110 cardstock. I place that into my MISTI, position my stamps, and then I'm going to stamp them using MFT Black Licorice Hybrid Ink. This is my go-to black ink as it is alcohol marker friendly and it's also suitable for using with watercolours, so I use it for pretty much everything. I do like to double stamp it just to make sure I get a nice crisp impression, and using the MISTI or another stamping tool is a great way to make sure that your double stamping will be in the exact same place so that you won't get messy lines. Once I'd finished my stamping, I put a mask over the top of the unicorn. I'm using my MFT Mini Cloud Stencil as a mask for the lower portion of the card as well, and then I have a Sunburst stencil for the top portion of the card. This is just a Sunburst stencil from my stash, but the Little Paper Tree does have a couple of Sunburst type stencils. There's, I think, the Twisted Sunburst from Catherine Pooler, and there's also a layering set which I believe is from Honeybee Designs, and I will have links to both of those down below. I'm using Squeezed Lemonade Distress Oxide for my ink blending, which is a nice yellow colour. And once I finished with the sun, I removed that stencil and I'm going to go over my cloud border and create 3 lines of clouds using the same Squeezed Lemonade ink. I tried to keep this paler than I had used on the sun, and that makes it very difficult to see on camera, and actually I think maybe I should have just made it a bit darker anyway. It is more visible in real life than it is on screen, but I think maybe it could have done with a bit more depth than I had given it originally. And each time I do a new row of the clouds, I rotate the stencil because each of the 4 edges has a different pattern of clouds to it. So by rotating the stencil and using a different edge each time, you get some variation in the look of the clouds. You can also flip it over and then you will get 8 different looks if you do each of the 4 on each side. Once I'd finished with the clouds, I also went along the very bottom of the card with the ink blending tool just to add a little of the yellow there as well. And then I'm going to move on to doing my colouring, and I'm using Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers for this. You can use any kind of alcohol markers you have. First, I'm going to lay in my lightest yellow colour in all the areas that I think the yellow of the sunlight would be hitting directly, and this will just give some highlight to my image. So I picked out where I thought all of those would be, added a little yellow, and then I'm using my blender pen to blend that out and soften the edges of the yellow. And I decided I would keep my unicorn as a white unicorn. So other than the yellow highlights, I'm going to use greys to add my shadow areas. I'll start by doing the hooves, and I'm using my darkest greys, which are brown greys. You can see all the lids on screen for the colours I have used if you'd like to recreate it. I place my darkest grey on the outer edges of each of the hooves and then use my next shade down and bring that almost all the way across, just leaving a very narrow slither white, and I'll go over that again with my lightest yellow just to add that yellow shine to them. Then I'm taking my lightest shades of grey that I have, and these are Ice Greys. I use Ice Grey 2 and Ice Grey 6, and again I'm mapping in all the areas that I think those shadows will be. So basically everywhere that's furthest away from the light source, and then also where the legs are overlapping each other, the ones in the back will be more in shadow than the ones in the front. And I started with my darkest shade and then blended it out a bit more with the lighter one, added in some more yellow highlights that I felt I'd missed, and then I'll use my blender pen again just to soften the edges of the grey and blend it out to white. Because as I said, I want this unicorn to be white, but by adding the grey shadows I help to add shape and dimension to the image, which makes it seem more realistic as a unicorn can be. The last thing to colour is the mane and the tail of the unicorn. I do struggle with hair a bit, so I'm definitely not an expert at it, but I try to lay in flicks of colour to give the impression of hair. I started with my lightest grey and then I went on to the darker grey in the shadow areas as well, and my camera did cut out, but I also blended over them with my blender pen just to soften them up a bit. I added a bit more interest to my colouring by going over it with coloured pencils. I used a very light yellow to add more highlight to the mane and tail, and also I used yellows for creating a cast shadow under my unicorn. And then I also went in with a grey and added more depth to the shadow areas. Also, whilst my camera was cut off, I added just a touch of pink, so I have brought in a little bit of another colour beyond yellow. I put the pink just on the unicorn's nose and inner ear, and whilst I have my pencils out, I will use that yellow to fill in the open areas of the sentiment. I really like doing that on the sentiments that are like this, with those open areas in the letters. As further embellishment to my card, I'm going to add some Nuvo glitter drops in Yellow Bird, which is a nice glittery yellow. I put these all across the unicorn's horn, and then I also did 3 different clusters of the Nuvo drops. So there's one cluster of 3 over by the sentiment, one on its own up more towards the top, and then 2 off to the right hand side, and I'm creating a visual triangle with these. And that completes my 1-layer monochrome card. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do press the like button down below, and if you didn't like it, then you can press the dislike button right next to it. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. You could let me know what your favourite colour is for using to make monochrome cards, if you've ever made monochromatic cards. And if you haven't made them before, has seeing my video made you want to try it perhaps? If you're not yet a subscriber to my channel or the Little Paper Tree channel, there are buttons on screen that you can press to subscribe and make sure you see all our future videos. There's also another video on screen that you may enjoy if you'd like to see more from us. Otherwise, I will thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye!